One day after the United Nations marked Yom Kippur as an official holiday, the UN's Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, voted that Judaism's most holy sites aren't really Jewish at all. Israeli leaders say that decision flies in the face of thousands of years of Jewish history. In a vote of 24 in favor, 6 against, and 26 abstaining, UNESCO gave preliminary approval to a resolution ignoring the Jewish connection to Jerusalem's Temple Mount and Western Wall.
This is at the core of Jewish and Christian history, and yet there's this systematic attempt to airbrush the history out of the picture.
Students of the Bible know that the Temple Mount behind me has been the focal point of Christian and Jewish history for thousands of years. It's where Abraham prepared to sacrifice Isaac and where King Solomon built a temple according to the Lord's direction. But this Palestinian-sponsored resolution refers to the Temple Mount and the Western Wall almost exclusively by their Muslim names. On his Facebook and YouTube pages, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said the UNESCO theater of the absurd continues.
Even if they don't read the Bible, I would suggest that UNESCO members visit the Arch of Titus in Rome. On it, one can see what the Romans brought back to Rome after they destroyed and looted the Second Temple on the Temple Mount 2,000 years ago. There, engraved on the Arch of Titus, is the 7-branch menorah, which is the symbol of the Jewish people, and, I remind you, is also the symbol of the Jewish state today. Soon, UNESCO will say that the Emperor Titus engaged in Zionist propaganda.
Netanyahu said this decision would be like saying China wasn't connected to the Great Wall or Egypt to the pyramids. CBN senior editor John Waggy said the Temple Mount is really ground zero for the Jewish and Christian faiths.
It's also the place where David was made king of Jerusalem, of Israel, and where Jesus overturned the money changers' booths at the temple, and also where Satan tempted Jesus.
The U.S. joined Great Britain, Germany, the Netherlands, Lithuania, and Estonia in voting against the resolution. U.S. Senators Marco Rubio and Mark Kirk urged the Obama administration to condemn its adoption, writing, "This is just another attempt in UNESCO's disturbing trend of attacking Israel and delegitimizing the Jewish state and does nothing to promote peace." The spokesman for the Palestinian presidency said the U.S. should review its policies toward Israel, and Israel should recognize a Palestinian state with Eastern Jerusalem as its capital, with its Muslim and Christian holy sites. Oddly enough, there wouldn't be any Christian holy sites if there hadn't been Jewish ones there first.
This is just one component of a larger Palestinian effort within the UN to delegitimize, to rewrite history so that this becomes a justification for a Palestinian state, a Muslim presence on the Temple Mount, a capital in East Jerusalem, all these things. So they're working on those simultaneously.
A final vote on the resolution is scheduled for next week. But if more countries don't stand up for Israel and the Bible, it's set to pass. You heard senior CBN News editor John Waggy in that report. I talked more with Waggy about the impact of the vote. John, we're standing here on the Mount of Olives and we're overlooking to the Temple Mount and that UNESCO's just voted on. What's your reaction to the UNESCO vote?
Well, really, Chris, it would be funny if it didn't involve so many nations and it didn't involve a serious issue, which is the Jewish presence, the Jewish history on the Temple Mount. They've taken this effort within the UN to rewrite history, and nations are actually voting to go along with it by the dozens. And the thing is that below us here is a graveyard with thousands of Jewish graves that have been buried here, people buried here for centuries. Not only that, but this is the place where Jesus overturned the money changers' tables and all of that sort of thing. So the Christian stake in it is huge. And also where Satan brought Jesus when he was tempted in the wilderness. He brought him to the pinnacle of the temple and told him to throw himself off so the angels could protect him. I mean, these are core events, God versus Satan events in the history of the Jews, of the Christians, of our faith. It's at the core, and now they're saying they want to change all the names to Muslim names and make this a heritage site that's exclusively pretty much belonging to Islam. That's just not going to wash, especially with Israel, and I think even with some of the nations that are too afraid to vote for it, and so or they abstain. But it's a real problem. But it's also part of a larger effort, Chris.
Yeah, is this the motivation behind it, this vote?
Yeah, this is a larger effort to delegitimize and rewrite the history so that Israel doesn't have a claim on Eastern Jerusalem, or it doesn't have a claim on the Temple Mount area. And so it's part of a larger effort that the Palestinians are undergoing at the UN, along with their hoped for state. They're going to try and delegitimize Israel and make it so that Israel doesn't have a claim on this area, even though the archaeological evidence is overwhelming that this is the site of Jewish history.
So the idea would be that this would be eventually, in the eyes of the world anyway, a Muslim site, a Palestinian future capital?
Exactly, and this whole area would be redivided, and you'd have fences and barbed wire and all those kind of things. That's what these people are actually hoping for within the United Nations, and I don't think that Israel, for one, is going to let it stand.
Well, John, appreciate your expertise, your insight, and we will certainly continue to cover this story because the controversy won't be going away.
Absolutely not, Chris.